Recording in progress. It sounds like we're making progress here.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Oh, I should make it. Yeah. See, I didn't even know this.
Forget.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And enthusiastic. Okay, can you hear me now? It seems like one of those days we need to eat the mic. Can you hear now? Yes. Okay. My name is Fred Zerm, and I represent the Friends of the Chautauqua Writers Center. We are a volunteer organization whose mission is to promote writing and writers on the institution grounds, and we hope beyond, by both supporting and supplementing the activities of the Chautauqua Writers Center. We sponsor several weekly events. On Sundays at 5 o'clock in the prose room on the second floor of this building, writers and listeners, 18 years old rather, and above, are invited to participate in an open mic session. And it looks like most of you are over 18, so you qualify. Each reader gets between 3 and 5 minutes to read. On Wednesdays at 1:15 in the ballroom, also on the second floor of this building, we offer an informal critique session. Writers are invited to bring in 10 copies of one single-spaced page of their prose or poetry for feedback, guided by a published writer, usually me. Okay. On Thursdays from 12 to 1, we have launched a new series, Locals at the Library. Each week, 2 to 3 Chautauqua authors will be available if the weather cooperates on the front porch, if not just inside the front door. They'll be available, as I said, to sell and sign their works. This week, Moxie Gardner will have a piece of retro fiction called Black Ice. She read at the Author's Hour just a few weeks ago. Patricia Averbach, who's reading today at the Author's Hour, will also be available at Locals at the Library. Especially her latest published book is Dreams of Drowning, but I think she might have some others available. And Doreen Gallagher Regan, co-author of Historic Places of Buffalo and Western New York, will also be available. And our other weekly event we're getting to right now is on Tuesdays. We sponsor the Author's Hour reading series. This year, we've expanded to 3 authors each week. There are so many Chautauqua authors. I'll tell you about special annual events after our first author reads. I want to remind you several times books will be for sale and signing up there. Our first reader, Patricia Averbach, is a former director of the Chautauqua Writers Center. She began her career at 16 as literary assistant. I'm going to butcher the pronunciation. Anzia Yaziewska.
Anzia Yaziewska.
Oh, I should have my wife after that. She's okay. The Jewish American author of The Immigrant Experience. A native Clevelander, she lived as a landed immigrant in Canada for many years. Dreams of Drowning from Bedazzled in 2024 was a finalist for the Tucson Festival of Books Literary Arts Award and Chanticleer's Somerset Award for Literary Fiction. Previous novels include Painting Bridges from Bottom Dog Press, 2013, Resurrecting Rain and Golden Envelope Press, 2020. I just love the names of your publishers, which was nominated for a Pushcart Prize, which is quite an honor. For poetry chapbook, Missing Persons, Lord Wood Publishing, 2013, won the London-based Lumen Camden Prize and was cited by the Times of London Literary Supplement as one of the best all collections of the year. Her work appears in the anthology 101 Jewish Poems for the Third Millennium, Ashland Poetry Press, She lives with her husband in Beechwood, Ohio, when she's not visiting her far-flung daughters in Toronto, Maui, and Peru.
Oh.
You know, and I thought Florida was a long way away. To learn more, visit her website at http://www.patriciaaverbach.com. She'll be reading from a work in progress that is, at least at this point, titled Glenville Girls. Wow.
Thank you. This is from my work still in progress. I hoped it would be done by now. It's called Glenville Girls. Glenville was the historic Jewish community in Cleveland back in the 20s, 30s, and up until about the Second World War. And this novel takes place in primarily Glenville between 1937 and the onset of World War II. The character we're going to be following in these pages, which are from the middle of the book, is Edna, who's largely regarded at 44 as an old virginal spinster, but in fact, she's not entirely. Okay. After 2 years of endless pain and agony, it happened so fast, it took everyone by surprise. Dolores Bernardi was gone. Of course, it wasn't a complete surprise. She'd been given last rites in February, then lay thin and pale as a wilted lily in her bed for months. She'd hung on so long, she'd begun to seem immortal until she wasn't. She left 4 small children and a spouse surprised by the depth of his grief. The Bernardis were a large clan, and Dolores had a huge family of her own, so the funeral filled the church. Edna sat quietly at the back, apart from the other mourners, both as a Jew who wasn't supposed to enter a church at all, and because she was afraid her sin glowed red and visible on her forehead for everyone to see. Besides, there was no need to taunt Dolores with the presence of her husband's mistress. The poor soul was burdened with enough grief after leaving her little ones without a mother. Over the following week, she sent Leo and his kids so many casseroles and pastries her father laughed. Cole's to Newcastle. The man owns a restaurant. But she kept cooking. She didn't know what else to do. Leo had closed the restaurant for 3 days following Dolores's death, then buried himself in his office, as silent and wraith-like as the dearly departed. Without being asked, Edna reordered stock, maintained timesheets, and saw that the dining room was in order while avoiding contact with Leo as her lover mourned his wife. It was a sad and lonely time that pushed Edna toward unaccustomed self-reflection. She was 44 years old and living at home with her father. She imagined growing older and grayer in the house on Pierpont, living alone after her father died, and Izzy, her niece, had married or run off to cover foreign wars. Of course, now that Leo was a proper widower, he might, after a decent interval, ask her to marry him. What would she say if he proposed? She wasn't sure, but she knew what her father would say if she came home with a goy, a practicing Catholic with 4 kids, no less. That thought made her put down the pen she was using to tally the night's reservations. 4 kids, and the oldest only 13, the same age Kaya had been when their mother died. She took a sip from the glass of Chianti sitting on the hostess stand. How old would she be when Leo's kids were grown? And how could she run her business if she took them on? Her gaze wandered up the stairs toward the closed door to Leo's office. What did he do in there all day? She hoped he wasn't brooding, guilt-ridden over his infidelity. Dolores had never suspected, and besides, she felt guilty enough for both of them. Evening preparations were complete, but it was still early. She tore a sheet of paper from the back of the reservations tablet and began making a shopping list for the Passover Seder, less than 2 weeks away. It was always the same crowd: Izzy, her father, Sam, Sam's mother, and Mr. and Mrs. Lewis. Edna's mother had invited the Lewises to the family Seder years ago when they were new in town and had nowhere else to go. Now, 20 years later, they still showed up like distant cousins for every holiday. They weren't family, but Edna had become fond of them over the years, and Mrs. Lewis always arrived with a bottle of wine and a Passover sponge cake. But this year there'd be an additional place at the table. David would be taking the Union Pacific nonstop to Chicago, then transferring to the Mercury line that would bring him to Cleveland, all in under 3 days. David is her younger brother. It would be the first time they'd been together in what? She did a quick calculation and came up with an unimaginable number: 7 years. Izzy had been only 10 years old, and Hitler never crossed their minds the last time he'd come home. Despite the gloom that hung over the restaurant, Edna was giddy with joy as she prepared for the holiday. And maybe a wedding as well. It was possible. David said he was arriving with big news, and it was about time. Her baby brother was almost 33. High time he settled down. She reached into the drawer beneath the hostess stand and pulled out a pack of Lucky Strikes and a box of matches. She inhaled deeply, keeping the cigarette between her lips as the shopping list grew longer. Money was still tight, but it was a holiday and David was coming home. She jotted down wine, matzah, chopped liver, gefilte fish, chicken soup, brisket, simmus, asparagus, macaroons, and sponge cake, imagining the long-awaited reunion with her brother. Her father had once dreamed of David returning home to become the next generation Schneiderman to run the grocery, but he'd given up that fantasy long ago. Whoever David had become, he wasn't a grocer like his father. He did something modern and jazzy with magnetic tape and synchronized sound at a movie studio in Hollywood. She understood he was no longer the boy who'd snuck out to League Park to watch the Indians play ball. She hoped the years hadn't changed him beyond recognition. Losing a mother was hard. David and Kaya had dealt with their mother's death in their own ways. David by withdrawing and Kaya by becoming rebellious and running wild. Edna snuffed out her cigarette and took another sip of wine. Her mother's illness had brought her childhood to an abrupt end. Leo didn't emerge from his office until it was nearly time to close. There was no question of Edna staying late to join him for a brief tryst in his inner sanctum. Those days or nights had ended with Dee's death, but there was an intimacy to their after-hour meetings greater than the physical connection they'd once shared. As the last of the kitchen staff washed down the counters and mopped the floors, he pulled up a stool beside the hostess stand. How were the night's receipts? It looked like a full house. We were busy. It would be nice to see you down here greeting customers again. Our regulars are asking about you. Believe me, you don't want me down here. I'd spoil everyone's dinner. He reached over and took a sip of Edna's Chianti. Anyway, it looks like you can run this place without me. Maybe I should just stay home and look after the kids. Dolores' sister isn't going to help out forever. They're a handful, and she's got 3 of her own. Would you like me to place an ad in the paper or contact an agency for you? You need a good housekeeper to help out. No, they're my kids, Edna. I don't want to pawn them off on some stranger. I need to know they're with someone I know and trust. He looked at her like a lost puppy begging to be taken in out of the rain. Edna squirmed awkwardly in her chair. She felt terrible for Leo, but if he imagined she was going to take on 4 grieving children, he was sadly mistaken. Let me ask around. There are plenty of good people looking for work these days. Let's see what I can do, okay? His shoulders slumped, defeated as he downed the last sip of her wine. Yeah, sure, there's no harm calling around. Kate isn't going to stay with us forever. It's the right decision, Leo. I'll start looking first thing in the morning. But the next morning was roiled by news that Germany had instituted a new wave of anti-Semitic measures. They were demanding that Jews itemize all property except for small household goods. Omissions and errors were punishable by 10 years forced labor. Aunt Minnie and Uncle Herman owned a business and an apartment in the fashionable Charlottenburg neighborhood in Berlin. They hadn't been willing to leave, not even as the Nazis made life impossible, not even after Minnie's son-in-law, Max, had been arrested. But things were different now and likely to get worse. Maybe now they'd finally emigrate. Edna was too agitated to sit still and too distraught to do anything constructive. So she put on her coat and called out to her father, "I'm going for a walk. I'll be back in a bit." He surprised her by calling back, "Wait, I'll go with you. I could do with some air." It was mid-April, but winter still clung to the damp ground. Daffodils shivered in beds dusted with the late snow while a cold breeze blew through branches that wouldn't leave out for 2 more weeks. Edna clutched the neck of her wool coat as she picked her way down Pierpont toward Rockefeller Park, careful to avoid the slushy puddles that pooled along the sidewalk. Her father, despite his age, strode purposefully beside her, oblivious to the weather. "So," he began as if they were already in mid-conversation, "what do we do? Is there some way we can make them come? If Hitler can't convince them, they're not going to listen to us. But I'll write again." Joseph suddenly brightened. "Maybe they could buy Schneiderman's and take over the business. That would be perfect." "Are you imagining the Germans are going to let them leave with their money? They'll be lucky to keep the clothes on their backs. They won't be buying anything. We'll have to support them, at least until they get settled." Joseph didn't reply, but Edna could see his mind was churning. She watched his breath form small clouds as they continued on in silence. He finally asked, "What about Gertrude, Minnie's daughter? Do you think she'd come?" "That's the problem," Edna replied. "Minnie won't leave without her daughter, and Gertrude won't leave without her husband. As long as Max is in prison, I'm afraid they're going to stay put no matter how bad it gets. So, convincing Gertrude to leave is our first job. Actually, she'd have the best chance to make a living in this country. Her English is good and she could give piano lessons, maybe even some concerts." They turned onto East Boulevard and continued north through Cleveland's Cultural Gardens. Edna's shoulders relaxed and she released the stranglehold on her collar as the sun warmed her back. "But even if we convince them to come, could they get visas? It's not that easy." They passed the Italian, Greek, and Lithuanian gardens, then came to an abrupt stop when they saw the red flag with a black swastika waving above the entrance to the German garden. A cold chill, having nothing to do with the weather, crept up Edna's spine. "I'll send Herman another invitation this afternoon, and I'll write a separate letter to Gertrude. It's time for them to leave." But what's that time?
2 minutes.
Oh, okay. Her father nodded grimly as he stared at the flag. "And find out what we have to do to sponsor them." It was only a few minutes past 10 when they returned home to find Izzy still in her bathrobe, struggling to complete a pile of workshop sheets for her German class. She tucked a wayward curl behind her ear and looked up. "Where have you been? You don't usually go out so early on a Sunday." Edna draped her coat over the back of a chair, then sat beside her niece and lit a cigarette. "We were just out walking and talking, mostly about family in Berlin. What would you think about them moving in with us?" "That would be great. You already invited them and they wouldn't come." "Well, things are getting worse in Germany, so maybe they'll come now. It would be a bit tight. You'd have to share your room." "That's fine with me. I've already invited Frida. I figured she could study at the Cleveland Institute of Music if she doesn't get into that conservatory in Berlin." Edna stared at her niece, momentarily dumbfounded. And you didn't bother telling me or your grandfather? Don't you think that's something you should have discussed with us? Izzy shrugged. He'd already invited them, and I figured Rita might come even if the others wouldn't. She could get a student visa and start next fall. Edna turned to her father. She's right. We should have thought of that. And if Frida comes, the others might follow. She patted Izzy's hand. You're a smart girl, though you should have told us what you were doing. When did you write her? Has she written back? I just mailed the letter a couple days ago. We won't hear her back for weeks, but we could start looking into student visas. She's some kind of piano prodigy, so she shouldn't have any trouble being accepted at the school. Edna reached into her pocket. Where do you apply for a visa? I don't even know where to start. Izzy grinned. Luckily, you have a journalist in the family. I've done a little research, and here's how it works. First, she needs an acceptance letter from CIM. Then, once she has the letter, she takes it to the U.S. Embassy in Berlin and applies for a visa. There's probably some more paperwork, but that's basically it. Most people have to wait years for a visa because of quotas and things, but there are no quotas for students, so there's a good chance that she could come. It's really great.
Thank you very much. That swastika German garden was chilling. And it makes me long for the days when there weren't quotas for either. Annual events that the Friends sponsor were at that time of the season where I have to speak about most of them in the past tense. Back in mid-July, we had the Authors Among Us book fair on Vester Plaza. I think we had about 20 authors, a record involved, participating. Look for that next year. Once again, mid-July. If you're an author, you can go to our webpage and apply to be part of the book fair. The webpage is chq.org/FCWC. We also sponsor a writing contest every summer that closed August 2nd, and just this past Sunday, August 16th, the awards were given in a ceremony in the Hall of Philosophy. You can read the winning entries at the library. I think they keep them in sort of reference just to look, not to check out and make sure they scrum right before. Okay. Also, if you go to YouTube and ask for the Friends of the Chautauqua Writers Center channel, there's a video of the awards ceremony that includes the winning poems, and I think very winning youth prose piece being read. The one annual event that still lies ahead of us is coming this Thursday at 3:30 in the Hall of Philosophy, the Robert Pinsky Favorite Poem Project that Georgia Court helped initiate when she had Robert Pinsky actually here on the ground. So many Chautauquans will be reading their favorite poems and very briefly describing why they like those poems so much. So please show up, Hall of Philosophy, and keep that file for next year if you have a favorite poem but didn't apply. I did forget to remind you that at the end of these meetings, we should have just a little time for Q&A. So if you have any questions, try to write them down or otherwise remember them. On to our second reader. Sign language, a chapbook, I'm supposed to emphasize, which means a shorter, focused collection of poems. It is Susan Nusbaum's fifth poetry collection. For previous books, what we take with us, Open Wide the Eye, Alive in This Place, This Uncertain Journey, were released by Coffeetown Press from 2014 to 2024. Born in Rochester, New York, she received a BA from Smith College and a law degree from the University of Buffalo Law School. She lives in Buffalo, where she raised her family and worked as a musician, teacher, administrator, and most recently, an attorney. Her work has appeared in numerous publications. I'll just name a few of them: the Connecticut Review, Poetry Peace, Nimrod International Journal, Chautauqua, the Literary Journal, Variety, Harper Palette, Wisconsin Review, and the Sound Theater, a celebration of Western New York poets, and also the Buffalo News. She's had readings throughout the Northeastern and Florida, and we're privileged to have her read here today. Susan.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Brad, for the introduction. I'm delighted to be here at Chautauqua, and I'm going to get right to it. My new chapbook, sign language, here looks like this. Just came over the weekend, and I was told that it wasn't going to come for quite a while because there was a delay in the printing of some such thing. Did you hear me? Oh no, all right, I forgot. I said. All right, you hear me now? Lower it. Lower. Oh, okay. All right. Anyway, it's here now, and although I had planned to read from my other books, I'm not going to. I'm going to just read from that one, and we'll get right to it. Signs appear in many forms. In stories of ordinary encounters, mysteries of the natural world, in relationships, in memories of the dead, in responses to tragedy, and romance, joy, and the joy of birth. Whether the signs are broadcast on billboards, through narratives, real or imagined, and there are 3 at the end of this book, which are only my narration about certain billboards that I've seen, but the rest of them are really found in the whispered messages hidden in the minutiae of our daily lives. Home, a glass of vodka, a shopping center, a blizzard, a spider web, you name it, and you'll find it in this book. These signs really help us to find resilience in our daily lives, and approach our lives with renewed energy and hope and humor. Listen, in the photograph, a blurred landscape, endless soot and rubble, devastation, faceless heroines howling across the hills, and careless ember caught in a marigold leaf, leaping to fields of Artemisia, pinyon pine forests, orange tongues twisting across Topanga Canyon, devouring the Palisades town square, carefully tended gardens of family homes, to patios, tool sheds, and cabanas, house fires stoked with desks and cribs and books, mantels and armchairs, dolls' houses and laptops, smoke trellising into a blackened sky. Nothing to hold for this teenage boy with the sad face as he picks through the silent bones of his childhood, amazed to unearth from the litter a single shard of gleaming gold, finger loop attached to a Limoges cup, whole and unstarred, gift to his mother from her mother's mother. Cradling the teacup in his hands, He offers it to the camera, blows away a veil of ash. Ashes. After my father's funeral, After my mother's funeral, my sister and I were left to dispose of her possessions, carefully lifting each item in a note. Silver salad bowl for company, Thanksgiving gravy boat, Pfannkuchen pan scoured to brilliance, antique mirror in the front hall where she brushed our hair before school. Piles of kitchen utensils, plates, and pots littered her kitchen floor. Books packed for the library, photographs in boxes to sort another time. When we stopped to rest a while, we found our two daughters weeping in the den, unable to imagine this house without their Nana. We hadn't foreseen that our children might feel this loss as we did, would react with such sorrow to the missing presence of their grandmother. While we, her daughters, buried our own grief in the mechanics of dispersal, scattering of ashes, as if these objects were all that were left. Golden locust. If you stand under its branches and look up into the autumn foliage, you might think you're staring at an autumn night sky by the lake. So surrounded are you by luminosity, gazing not from a distance, but centered inside a room of mirrors, finding your reflection flickering around you. 1,000 oval flames against the blue. Today, no sound stirs the late October air. No sparrows fill their chatter within this space. Only a quiet breeze, breathing the golden leaves into motion, and the faint buzz of the cosmos, offering one last rapturous moment to hold you through the long winter until spring begins its leaping up. And soon, amazed, you'll find yourself back inside the heart of things. How's the sound? Okay. Some of you may remember Ron Van Bargen, my husband. And this is really dedicated to him. I want to hold your hand. It's not unusual to see couples strolling down Lafayette Avenue, swinging their joined hands as they chat and laugh into the delicious spring air, still clinging as they pause to admire red tulips, purple irises on front lawns, past vast front porches, waving greetings to neighbors with their free outside hands to avoid letting go. What joy I recall as I drive by, to have a warm hand in mine, to help me keep my balance as I walk, to share the surprises of a new season, and along the way connect with near strangers who would smile to see me coupled, so secure in the arc of the swing, someone's fingers braided through my own, someone who wants to walk with me along whatever path we decide to follow. This one is really Chautauqua related. It's called Portage Road. As you know, Portage Road is really Route 394. And on the way from Buffalo, where I live, there's a particular spot which I love to look at. And this poem is about that spot. Portage Road. From the rise on Route 394, you can see everything. intersections and potholes, S-curves, deer crossings, hawks circling overhead, the road bounded by dark forests fringed with milkweed, and the calm of two waters, Lake Erie, hazy in the rear view, easing you toward the shimmer of Lake Chautauqua on the horizon. Push ahead like the Senecas before you, who dragged their canoes onto dry land, lifting them through footpaths and fertile fields over the miles between one lake and the other. And French explorers heaving their birch-bark vessels through dense woodlands on their trek to discover the mouth of the Susquehanna and beyond to the Mississippi. Emboldened by the hum of tarmac beneath your wheels, feel the irresistible nudge of history, waves spilling over ragged shorelines, urging you forward between two lakes. And because I forgot to print this one out, this is another Chautauqua poem, which is dedicated to a very dear friend and fellow poet, Mary Ann Moorfield, who unfortunately can't be here during this season. But anyway, she and I used to write poems together. Well, we took poetry classes and workshops together, and then we would go to each other's homes to do workshops and criticize each other's poems. And it was always a wonderful experience. She is a terrific person. On my table for Mary Ann, some books, a bunch of pencils, a scattering of poems, blue gravy boat filled with paper clips, 2 placemats with coffee rings, knife for peeling skin from peaches, spoon sticky with jam. In the center, a pitcher filled with flowers from Mary Ann's garden. The bouquet she carried with her, picked this morning, yellow daisies and black-eyed Susans, globes of blue hydrangeas, white lupin spires, and a single echinacea, guaranteed to cure lethargy, the pallor of aging, inertia, the loneliness of a solitary life. This child of New Orleans, Katrina's castaway, spinning on the edge of himself, longing for home, struggling to grasp his art, slim lifeline in a heartless world, the shape of his life to be decided by strangers and chance. After his recital, he joins us for dinner. Ashen with exhaustion, with the disgrace of failing to reach the high B flat near the end of the list. It was the passion of the poetry, he tells us, that guided him to that Petrarch sonata. The Italian words, so difficult. The music, so exquisite. So treacherous. Okay. Okay, I have something to play for you if I can find it. I don't want to take the time, but here it would be if I can. Dear, maybe this will take too long. Has anybody here ever heard a whippoorwill? You have. Okay. Well, I wanted to show everybody, have everybody hear it. And I just had it a minute ago. So bear with me for, oh, here it is. Okay. This is a whippoorwill. You did it. Okay. Well, maybe I'll have to deal with that. We'll have to. It's not, it's going on. Okay, never mind. Anyway, you'll have to imagine it. Whippoorwill. These soft, oops, hello? These soft Florida days, a breeze brushes my cheek, herons call across the bay, ripples reflect a cloudless sky. But when night comes, a squawk pierces my sleep, not a song, not a whistle, deafening, incessant, 3 syllables repeated like some maniacal robot or a mechanical ceiling fan malfunction. Google informs me it's a whippoorwill, a small nocturnal bird with a wingspan broad as an owl's. The cacophony territorial, designed to attract a mate. I lie awake seething with annoyance, hoping he'll soon find the perfect match with help, perhaps, from an avian eHarmony. Sleepless and mateless, I begin to find his search strangely comforting, recognizing that this creature, reprogrammed eons ago, is doing his life's work, running on automatic, as he must, and I'll adjust as I must. Thank you.
This Susan, for those very perceptive and touching phone. How is the sound doing? It's been a little erratic. Okay now? So, let me find my place. Just a few events upcoming this week that I want to mention before we get to our third reader. Tomorrow, somewhere on the steps on the porch presents what's called CLSC Unbound. They'll be reviewing a book whose title I have lost, but I'm sure it's a worthwhile book. So, on Vester Plaza, they'll be going over the youth books for the week. Not so much for the discussion as for the activities. So if you have children or grandchildren who've been reading the Young Readers book, they might be interested. On Friday at 12:15 here on the porch, we have what's called the community reading that will feature spotlight readers from the week's poetry and prose workshop, and also the unveiling of the community poem. The community poem is stitched together from contributions from you. So if you go to poetry.stagecube.org, you can discover details about the prompt of the week, which in general have to do with the theme of the week, food. What food means to you, family food, cultural food, regional food. And somewhere you're supposed to use Lucille Clifton's phrase, I taste in my natural appetite. And I do want to remind you, although lots of you have been here this summer, have gotten used to the changing schedule of the CLSP writer no longer speaks on Thursday at, I think it used to be at 3:30, but Friday at 2. And this week, it'll be a person who's taught several times here at the Writers Center. Amy Masuka Matatio. I'll try that one more time. Masuka Matatio. Bite by Bite, Nourishments and Jamborees, Lyric Essays. She's an essayist and a poet. Our third reader book is also an essayist and a poet. Maureen Ryan Griffin has loved words and stories since her Cat in the Hat days. Reading it, not writing it. Okay. And in addition to publication in numerous literary journals and the Chautauqua Daily, her work recently appeared in anthologies, Chicken Soup for the Soul, Miracles, Angels, and Messages from the and moved into gold, hands-on guide to the crafted writing How do I say goodbye? A companion and breathing feeling of gratitude. And a daily gratitude practice called TAG, kindness. She lives in Charlotte, North Carolina, and leads writing workshops and retreats through her business, wordplaynow.com. Maureen.
Hi, everybody. Thanks to each one of you for being here. There is nothing better for me than being surrounded by people who love words. And I know that's exactly where I am right now. I want to say a huge thank you to Fred for the time and effort he puts into making this happen for all of us. And I think we need to give him a big round of applause. And he's a fine poet himself. I love all the poems of his I've heard, but he has a collection called Rescue Dogs that I'm particularly fond of. I hope I have the name right for that. So I'm going to start off talking a bit about my writing book, Spinning Words into Gold. And I love this book so much. And I know that's a funny thing, you know, maybe some braggy to say about something that you wrote yourself, but I love it so much because it is a homage and tribute to so many writers I love who have contributed to me. And I have beginning writing students in there and all kinds of exercises and prompts. I set it up kind of like the readers I loved in school where we read stories. And so it was just so much fun to put all this together. And I thought I would read just teeny little excerpts by other people that I have in the book. And one of them is the poem by Mary Oliver, The Summer Day, which probably a lot of you know. And I want to highlight that because her documentary about her is playing at the theater this week, and the cinema. And I'm so excited about seeing it. And I'm just going to read you the last two lines of this poem, which are, tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life, which has trued me up to my life many times over. And then how many of you here are writers? Raise your hand if you're a writer. Okay, and some of you aren't raising your hands because you write beautiful letters to other people of thanks and encouragement and many other things, and don't consider yourself writers, but you are writers too. And I have a beautiful piece in here by Ray Bradbury, which I will not read in its entirety because it's too long, but I wish I could. And one of the other joys of this book for me was contacting Mary Oliver. I had to go through her publisher, but Ray Bradbury, I got to communicate with directly, and he sent me back the loveliest notes to both my request to use a piece of his writing, and also when I sent him the proof, he sent me a postcard that said "Onward" on it, which was fun to get. And this is, I put this at the very beginning of the Who chapter. I have the book organized by who, what, why, where, when, and then I have 5 hows. And the ending of this made me realize I had to put it in. So he's talking in this piece about 1925 Illinois, where he and his grandfather set a fire balloon on a 4th of July up into the sky, and how beautiful it was, and how there was this porch filled of uncles and aunts and cousins and mothers and fathers, and they set this up. And then he says, I see my grandfather there looking up at that strange drifting light, thinking his own still thoughts. I see my eyes filled with tears because it was all over. The night was done. I knew there would never be another night like this. No one said anything. We all just looked up at the sky and we breathed out and in, and we all thought the same things, but nobody said. Someone finally had to say though, didn't they? And that one is me. My beloved family still sits on a porch in the dark. The fire balloon still drifts and burns. Oh, everybody over there? I didn't see you. The fire balloon still drifts and burns in the night sky of an as yet unburied summer. Why and how? because I say it is so. And that's what we get to do as writers. So to my fellow tribe members, I'll say that. And I have to read one more piece just because it's too fun not to. I have all of these tools to enter the writing process, and thanks to my students who are here, I see several of you here, and I'm so happy that you're here. We're having a wonderful time playing with these tools this week, and the Mary Oliver tool was used. Poem was used for the tool of the inquiry, asking many questions, including questions in your writing. And then I have this tool called the likening, where we play with metaphor with a sidebar quotes everywhere, which I love. Richard Wilbur, I discovered his poetry when I was in high school, and he has this quote, that a thing is most itself when likened. And I got to lead poetry in the schools for a while in my past, and I had this wonderful fifth grader named Colleen Krogan, and she did an acrostic where you take the letters of a word, and she had love, so it's LOVE, and she wrote this poem that I think we all can appreciate right now and lean into really hard. Love is very odd. I mean the way it works. It vacuums up the evils of the earth. So that's in honor of Colleen, who's in her 30s now. But I had never heard love compared to a vacuum cleaner before, but I thought that was pretty splendid. So on to my writing. I created two of these grief rituals. So grab this other one. When I lost my mom, and they were never meant to be books, I was just saying goodbye to my mother, but one thing and one person led to another thing in person, and here they are. And my mother, when I was growing up, she was two mothers in one body. And I had this mother who taught me how to love books and music and art and sunsets so much. And then I had this other mother who sometimes hurt me. So I have a huge interest in the healing power that writing has. And writing gave me one mother that I was able to completely forgive and realize what she was undergoing as she was raising us, the kinds of challenges that she was facing, both internally and in the family, and then to just find and appreciate all of these gifts that she gave me. And this is a little tiny prose piece. My foods are all my readings are all going to be food related in honor of the week. So this piece is called Eyes in the Back of Her Stew. Can't read today. Okay, I'm going to take a deep breath. Everybody take a deep breath with me. I get so excited that my words can tumble. So, eyes in the back of her head stew. In one of my most treasured memories, my mother stands with her back to me, cooking supper. I am 3 years old and have propelled myself into the kitchen on my wooden riding horse. Climbing off, I stare at the painted circus animals chasing each other around the colorful metal wheels. What's this? I ask, pointing, knowing very well what it is. My mother turns to look. Zebra. I let her turn away before asking again, what's this? Elephant, then lion, then bear. I keep going around and around the wheel, sometimes skipping animals just to see if she's paying attention. She keeps turning and answering until the moment I ask yet again, what's this? And she answers correctly without looking around. I am utterly amazed. How did you do that? I have eyes in the back of my head. You do not, I said. Show me. She laughs. I keep on pressing for an answer. But how did you know? You knew without looking. It's because I'm a mother, she says. Someday you'll be a mother and you'll be able to do it too. Perhaps I remember this incident so vividly because it was the first time I encountered the idea that I would actually grow up, that I could someday be a mother too, It seemed impossible. And yet there was my mother, so sure of it, she could say so in the midst making stew. I have a number of poems in the back of this as examples. And now I'm going to turn to 10,000 Cicadas Can't Be Wrong, my poetry book. And I am going to start, as long as I'm talking about my mother. This poem has an epigraph by Edward Hirsch. My mother is dressed in a dress the color of crushed strawberries. And I was given that in a poetry class I took, and I wrote this poem in response to it, the color of crushed strawberries. My mother is dressed in a flannel nightgown, the color of faded morning glories, on her knees on the hardwood floor of her bedroom, mumbling Hail Marys, begging forgiveness for the sin of not wanting 5 children's worth of work. My mother is dressed in an apron the color of ashes, by the stove, frying sugared parsnips, spearing chunks of city chicken, serving salted complaints about how we don't appreciate her. My mother is dressed in corduroy pants, the color of sodden newspapers, on a stepladder, the smell of ammonia strong, the window panes squeaking, the streaks meekly disappearing in the face of her furious rubbing. My mother is dressed in a raveled sweater, the color of old snow, scrubbing socks on a washboard. She is not dressed in her wedding rings. They hang on the Virgin Mary's white ceramic hands, palms together, pointing upward in supplication. How I longed to see her in lipstick the color of crushed strawberries, humming as she dressed in blue watered silk. But summer upon summer, after we bruised our knees, picking in the fields, bent over the sink, hulling entire afternoons away, she let me wield the potato masher in the copper-bottomed pot filled with the makings of next winter's jam. Thank you. I know I wanted to applaud so many times for Pat and Susan for the beautiful words. So that seems like a good time to read a poem for my daughter. It's called Eat a Peach, Amanda. And I went to the farmer's market yesterday, and they had some older apples that were, very ripe and a couple bruises. Is that 2 minutes? Okay, well, perfect. And she let me have it for $1. And I was so excited to see that. So this is Eat a Peach, Amanda. We pull off to savor the taste of summer sun. Peaches, too warm to be boons, too luminous, too ripe to leave unhandled, though they bruise like human flesh. A peck for peach butter, peach pie, peach preserves, enough gold to last the winter. You smile back at the farmer as he gives you one, tells you it's a good year for peaches. I tell you to eat it slowly, as if there'll never be another. Let its juice run down your chin, stain your soon outgrown clothes. Keep on, feast on peaches until you are sated. How I want you to remember our rain-washed drive through Gaffney, orchard after orchard laden, lush with the scent of such a good year for peaches. This farmer scraped through the past 4 years of late spring freezes, the years since you were born, when peaches came in hard and dry and small. He's offered you his finest freestone, dropped its weight in your cupped hands, a keepsake of this moment in the grace of a good year for peaches. Thank you.
I love the way they showcase other writers as well as yourself. a very good year for writing. We have time for just a few questions if anyone has questions for one or more of the authors. Any questions out there? Odd silence. Okay. Just a few closing announcements. Please join us next week for the Authors Hour when we have a Janet Crozier reading from her book of fiction, Weymouth House. Sid Goldsmith, who's right out there, is reading either memoir or fiction because he writes both. David Roth will be reading poetry from his book, Threads. Please consider joining the Friends of the Chicago Writers Center and help sponsor all the events that have been mentioned. In addition to one thing I haven't been mentioning this summer, we also sponsor writing, you might call them scholarships, but we pay the tuition for some summer scholars, young students from junior community colleges, disadvantaged students who show great promise. So that's another thing you can help sponsor. And if you join it this late date, your membership is good next year as well. I hesitate because today's video will probably be in 3 or 4 segments because the Wi-Fi kept cutting out. But all the Authors Hour since 2020, when we all went virtual, are available at the Friends of the Chicago Writers Center channel on YouTube. Hope to see you next week. Take care.
It's nice to hear. Okay, really looking forward to it. They also got two else. Who else?
Excuse me.